evening, everyone, and I welcome you all at the Royal Majestic Plethora of Hawa Mahal. Finally, we are here. Since I took charge as the chairperson, I always dreamt of two things. One, being getting FLO to experience the heritage sites of Jaipur, to capture its true beauty, and the other was to host a literary event wherein we can provide a platform to members to get closer to books again. And luckily, both my dreams have come to life at the same time. I'm very sure most of us are witnessing this beautiful courtyard for the first time, and all thanks to the Archaeological Department, Government of Rajasthan, for giving us this opportunity. I believe our culture, our language, our tradition are the foundation upon which we built our identity. The importance of getting back to books, running your imagination beyond borders and Google, dreaming with your eyes open, just sink into this world and experience a new you. Not wasting a minute, I would now like to start with the conversation with Siddharth, Shanghvi and Sooni Taraporewala.
And I just want to preface this evening by saying that I am in the company of two of the most civilizing forces, books and women. So I am so profoundly grateful that these two forces are keeping me here this evening. I'm present for them to pay obeisance, to pay homage to your collective genius.
It just happened?
Yeah, because also, I think there's a certain kind of, I'm not interested in being defined by what I do, but who I am. And therefore, when I was living I still do, I live in a village of 3,000 people in North Goa, the symbols of conventional success began to lose their aura. My friend Ariana Huffington talks about this, where she talks about the third metric of success. She talks about how we need to transcend the definitions of public success, wealth, money, name, fame, power. What it led me to, what my personal definition of success then became, was how to be alone without feeling lonely. And once I was able to do that, I think many things came out of it. When I realized that I could engage with my solitude meaningfully, the books flowed, the art flowed, the photography flowed. So it was not any longer dependent on the conventional constructs of society. I didn't really care whether somebody read me, whether they knew me, I was relevant or not, whether somebody said, he's published a book, he hasn't published a book, he's been forgotten. It didn't matter. And to me, that strength became more powerful than publicly defined notions of success. I used to read me a lot of Hans Christian Andersen growing up as a child. And I remember my mother, who, by the way, spent a lot of her years in Rajasthan. My grandfather was a professor at Jodhpur University, and my mother spent many years in Udaipur and in Jodhpur. So I have a very profound connection with Rajasthan. Every time I come here, I know that I'm back home. She used to read me a lot of Hans Christian Andersen, fables like The Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid. And I always remember that in the middle of reading of those books, she would begin to weep. Now, my mother was like a lioness, she wasn't somebody who was given to tears very easily. But I recognized therein that the strength of those fables was their simplicity. There was these entry points which allowed you to recognize how, as human beings, we are more alike than we are unalike, which is to say that love has ways of failing us, and that we will fail love. That we disappoint our friends, and our friends will disappoint us. And the recognition of that humanity and those cracks, those dents, is what brought those short stories to life. And I remember how my mother responded with full feeling and with full heart when she did read all of those short stories. A rich person, a rich boar. And within a few months, she recognizes, this isn't for me, this isn't working. And what does it really impel her to do? She recognizes that these children, these are going to be emissaries of my husband's, awful qualities. They're going to be emissaries in this world of his boringness. So a part of her is like, I just want to eat them and get it over with. Of course, it's metaphorical. Of course, she's not, impelled in any such way. But and later she clarifies, when the rabbit asks her that, did you really? And she said, no, it was just so that people would think I was crazy and ask me to leave. And I wanted to get out of that marriage so badly that I would have done anything to be given that kind of permission. And actually, the Booker Prize winning author Anne Enright, the author of The Gathering, was visiting me in Goa 2 or 3 years ago. And she said something very profound. She said that when I was 21, I was institutionalized in Dublin. And she said, everyone looked at me as a crazy woman. And she said, there was nothing that gave me more power than being labeled a crazy woman. Because the minute the men of the world label a woman crazy, she is free. She has passport into all worlds, every world, and she is fearless, she's powerful, nothing and no one can question her. So perhaps the squirrel was aiming for that. She's just like, yes, think I'm crazy, think I'm a lunatic, and get me out of this false, inauthentic, insincere structure that I'm stuck in.
So I just want to tell something about the book here, since a lot of you have not yet read the book. So what we are talking here is about when the squirrel she's really, she's in a situation where she wants to leave the house and run away. And she thinks how she's going to do it. And then she thinks that, and then she tells her husband, that's the boar, that I'm going to kill all my kids and I'm going to run away. And she thought that's the only way my husband would let me go. So that's how she runs away from the house, and probably her husband lets her go, right?
But before that, he has her institutionalized. He has her put in an asylum, and he goes off and gets married to someone else.
Yeah.
So, which is of course a very male thing to do. But
if this was a film, how would you classify it? UA, A, or U?
definitely A. Everything I do is A. I'm sorry. My publishers were, at some point in time, there was a misunderstanding. Pia, who's here, will tell you that, there was, it went out because Stina does these illustrations for children. A lot of her work gets classified as children's literature. And the first page opens with a description of a blowjob. So, so Mohit over here, Mohit, are you here? Thank you very much for keeping books alive in Jaipur and beyond. So Mohit was telling me the story of how kids in Jaipur were coming into his store and saying they wanted to buy this book. And then the parents were reading the first page and they were like...
Yeah, so my kids told me, is this book for us? Since it shows two characters as rabbit and squirrels, and I told them, no, it's not for you. Yet.
Not yet.
Yet, yes, exactly.
So you had previously said that The Lost Flamingos of Bombay would be your last book. Why did you say that? And I'm so happy it's not your last book. And when can we expect your next book?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I really never thought I would ever be a career writer. I never thought I would be somebody who makes book after book after book. I always wanted to respond to things when I needed to or had to or could. So nothing in my life has been preordained. Nothing in my life has been, carefully thought through and planned. I'm focused, but I'm the least ambitious person I know. So I think that at this point of time, I'm enjoying being on the beach in Goa so much that whatever book I write has to transcend the pleasures of the sun and the sea of Goa.
So you write for various platforms, and you're the honorary director of Sunaparanta, which is an arts foundation in Goa, and where I was privileged to show my pictures thanks to my friendship with Siddharth. So which role do you enjoy the most, or all of them?
Well, Sooni, I think maybe you can also help me answer this question, which is, and actually one of the reasons that I became more free to think of myself other than just a writer is because of Sooni, because Sooni wears many hats. She is a visual artist, she's a photographer, she's a screenwriter, she's a director of a film, she's a mother, she's a wife. So there were multiple roles that she did, and she wore them all effortlessly. So growing up, as I was watching Sooni kind of, dance between these roles, I thought, why can't you do all of these? And I studied photography as a student in London. That allowed me to think about my books visually. Writing the books allowed me to return to photography with concision, restraint, economy, and being able to think in language and to be able to translate that to the making of pictures. When I did enough of the photography and I came to the curation at Sunaparanta and running an arts foundation and watching and learning how other artists actually make their work, the most important thing I got out of that was, what do you leave behind? The reason I think that this book is such a little book, or it's such a small book, is because so much of what one wants to say must be distinguished by how succinctly, how quietly, how elegantly, and how much economy you exercise when you say that. So I think one practice built into another and allowed me to return to it with the knowledge that I got that the other medium gave me. Is that true for you?
Started as a photographer, wrote my first screenplay. It was a success. It was Salam Bombay.
Which is nominated for an Oscar. So it was quite a success.
Found I had another career as a screenwriter, and so all my earnings that I made from my screenplays went into financing my photography and all the expensive cameras I could never afford before. And at the age of 50, I gave myself a birthday present and directed a film. So yeah, it's been a totally unplanned journey and a very wonderful one, just like yours.
Here, I would like to ask a question to probably both of you. Do you feel we take life too seriously and would rather enjoy the journey instead? There's a line in the book which says, "The only measure of time was the fun you had with it." Could you tell us more about it? And Sooni, since you just told something about you which we didn't know, so I would rather like to have something from you also for the same.
Sorry, what was your question?
Do you feel we take life too seriously and would rather enjoy the journey instead?
Absolutely, that is both Siddharth's and my main goal in life, to have a good time. It's easier said than done, because when one is making a film, yes, one wants to enjoy oneself, but very often it's fraught with all kinds of problems and problem solving and stress and tension. So one would like to have fun most of the time, but sometimes it's not possible. And I think in the creative fields that we're in, usually people are perfectionists with great attention to detail. It leads to a lot of stress because not everybody around you is a perfectionist. So, as I said, one wants to have fun, but sometimes you have to consciously try to have fun and remember that, you know, there is more to life. You know, there's more to life than a film or a book or an album of photographs. And I must say, becoming a mother has really helped me in that, helped me to...
How has becoming a mother helped you with that?
It's just given me a perspective that just like I get enjoyment out of my creative pursuits, so I get that same satisfaction, if not more, from my kids. So it has given me a totally different perspective in life. Because for instance, when my kids were babies and I had a deadline and they had fever and you had to make a choice, I did make the choice of staying with them rather than fulfilling the deadline, which is not very professional, but you know, those are the dilemmas that you have when you are a mother. I'm sure all of you have faced it. And a friend once told me something I've never forgotten. She said, "Sooni, you'll never stop feeling guilty, no matter what you do," and that's true. So,
you know, I run an arts foundation in Goa, which is owned by very dear friends Raj and Dipti Salgaonkar. Dipti is the daughter of Dhirubhai Ambani. And one of the things he would ask her when she married my friend Raj and moved to Goa, was he would call her in the evening and say in his Gujarati baritone, "Maja aave chhe?" And I thought to myself, yeah, here is, you know, at the time he was one of the world's richest men when he was alive, and he's boiled his life down to these three simple words, "Maja aave chhe," which in Gujarati means, "Are you having fun?" And I thought, yeah, wow, I want to live my life by that. And I remember it makes everything easy. You know, you don't want to go for a dinner party? Don't go. You're not going to have fun. You want to go for a dinner party? Go. The minute you stop having fun, leave. I remember a few years ago, I was doing a talk at the Bangalore Lit Fest. And, I mean, it was on stage, and I think it was Arun Shuri started having a fight with somebody, BJP politics, Congress politics. And I'm thinking to myself, I've woken up in the morning from Bombay, flown to come to Bangalore to do this talk. And these horrible, horrible, horrible political men are sitting and rowing in front of me. I wasn't born to sit and put up with this rubbish. So, there's actually footage of me removing my mic on the stage in front of 2,000 people and saying, I'm sorry, I just have to leave. And that's what I did, because in my head I was like, I'm not having fun. So why do I need to do this? There's nothing that I do. I mean, of course there are important things like caring for people, and they aren't always fun. You have to look after the people you love. That's difficult, dangerous, life's work. And that I try not to ever turn away from. But things like this, who cares?
The only love that sticks around is the love you let go. Could you tell us more about this? Do we have to test our love by letting it go?
It's a beautiful question, thank you. I think that, love in so many ways is perfect when it's not realized. When we live in the magnitude of its arrival, when we can watch it coming towards us, when it's just there. Love also comes alive when it's about to leave, The threat of its retreat, the threat of its departure wakes us up thinking, oh my God, I'm going to lose this. So what really is perfect love? What is it, and you also see in our iconography with Radha and Krishna, for instance, it's always love that is unfulfilled. It is always love that she's thinking about. And therefore that love is perfect because the imaginative forces of her longing have already... Very briefly, I want to tell you a story about Radha and Krishna and how in certain parts of North India there's also Radhashtami. Just as in most parts of India you celebrate Krishna Janam. And that's because in those villages, in those parts of India, they look at her as a greater hero than Krishna. Because they believe that, Krishna went out, he fought his wars, he became a hero, he, was a deity, became God. But she being a mortal, and she living her longing for this person all her life, made her a hero, made her, there's something called Viraha Bhakti, which is that a bhakti of abandonment, the bhakti that comes out of being abandoned. So that was an idea that always stayed with me. And I've always thought of Radha as a greater hero, the female force as a more edifying force and a more elegant sacrifice that she makes.
Why are we so caught up in what the world believes is good for us, vis-a-vis what we ourselves believe? Sometimes misery gives us the strength to be what we want to be, that is the squirrel, finally leaving the boar and traveling and doing everything to her heart's desire. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, pretty much that she travels. But I would qualify that as that even though she travels, she's free, and the rabbit goes into a monastery and starts thinking about, what is life, what does it mean to him. So in different ways, they have become alone. He has taken a spiritual path, she's become a bohemian, she wants to travel, and she does. But what unifies them is the memory of shared time. What unifies them, what exists, over and above all of physical time, is the fact that that invisible mesh of memory still drapes over both of them.
Do you think they would have some, they should have had some regrets about not getting so much time what they missed on, the squirrel and the rabbit?
For me, the tragedy is the fact that they didn't recognize how perfect their time together was already. In anticipation of something better, in anticipation of something that society says is correct, they had lost what was already whole and perfect. That to me is tragic, that in that moment that you're enjoying it and you could potentially have it forever, to not glimpse the perfection of life as it is, as whole and true and authentic into itself, is what makes this book, what gives it its sadness.
Anything else that would you like to say about the book, or have to give it just about the book?
Not about the book, but to acknowledge the generosity of your time and to acknowledge my love for Jaipur, and that I hope that I'm back, and I'm so grateful to you for inviting me, and to Sooni. You know, I'm also very aware that, Sooni is a much greater and a more serious and a more senior artist than I am. So to be privileged by her presence over here is really a reminder of the friendships in my life, that I can pull rank and say, Sooni, you're my friend, can you come with me and do this? And so I feel less alone on stage. And here she is, my friend Sooni.
Anytime, Siddharth, and that's nonsense about all the junior and senior.
Thank you so much. So
Hello? Yeah. My friend Hans, who lives in Washington, told me this, and it's always stayed with me. He said that if you want a marriage to work, it's perfectly all right to be boring around each other. And you know, when you're a writer, when your life is vaguely public, you put an emphasis on always being interesting, always being on, always being perfect, always or trying to be perfect. And so when he said that, it seemed like a shock. I was like, to be boring around somebody, I would leave. And he said, no, but if you want a marriage to work, that's got to be the fundamental premise, that you're going to have to be okay for both of you to be boring around each other. And I think that is, a very profound piece of advice.